Sensei John Small with the Western Mountain Jiu-Jitsu Society, and today I'm going to be talking to you about safe lifting techniques. It really is a technique, and as such it's a skill that you develop. It's a technique that you develop, you get better at it. The more you practice it, the more you learn it. I am addressing this topic both in terms of knowing how to lift properly when working with free weights, or if you're working with various workloads. The same principles are involved in both cases. So let me start by saying that I've touched upon some of the aspects of safe lifting in previous videos, namely the introduction to strengthening and conditioning, about controlling the weight. I just did a video on using a weight belt and other aids. I've discussed previously about the weight you should be working at, not going too heavy, knowing when to go up in weight. All of these things tend to apply more when you're doing resistance training as opposed to working with a workload that you have to deal with. You can't always exactly control the weight or the shape of the things that you have to lift. So there are a variety of things to consider. So let me get straight into the technique itself. The first thing to consider, well, I'll start by using a bar here, is the head. I think of making sure that when I'm lifting, I'm looking up. In the gym I used to work out at, there used to be an arrow on the wall above the mirror, where when you're doing your squats or your deadlifts, you would want to put your eyes on that arrow. So as you're going down, you're keeping the head up. And that helps to naturally make that spine curve in that direction. You don't want to let your back start rounding when you're lifting something heavy. That's where you can start to get into real trouble with your joints and your spine. You want to work to keep that natural curve, thrusting your abdomen forward. And it really helps to keep the head up to do that. You want to make sure that you have a good grip on whatever it is you're working on. And if you're doing deadlifts, an overhand, underhand, heavy weights of that sort, when you're working in that regard, an overhand, underhand grip is recommended. It's also a good idea to spot people that way when you're spotting them on a bench press or something else. But I'll get back to speaking more about grip when it comes to working with heavier loads in just a minute. The lifting technique itself, you want to think about keeping your, as I say, your back rounded, your head up, and also work to keep your weight back on your heels. Some people, when they're lifting, might be a little thick, but I can use it to illustrate. They like to use like a 2x4 or maybe something that's an inch or 3/4 of an inch under their heels to help make sure that they're getting the forces coming down through the heels and not up onto the balls of the feet. That's something that you want to avoid, is the balls of the feet. That tends to project more strain up through the knees and put your knees at risk. So making sure that your weight's back on your heels, you're bending at the legs, you're not bending at the back and at the waist in that way. You want to make sure that you're getting the back in an isometric contraction. Again, I've talked about that in some previous videos, where the muscle's neither lengthening or shortening. You're really contracting it, bracing it tight, weight back to the heels, and then you're lifting up. And as you're lifting up, you want to make sure that you're keeping this load really close to you. Some of these power lifters that you'll find that they really are keeping it so close, sometimes they end up with these scrapes up and down their shin from where the knurls of the bar are grinding on it. So you really want to think of keeping that load close. The leverage isn't going to be working against you at all. And then as you come up, then move like that. You're looking to thrust those hips forward. You're just getting those hips in underneath your back as soon as you can, so that you're really supporting that load from the legs up. Now, once you have the load up, it's important not to twist in any action like this at the waist. Again, the whole midsection is going to be a strong isometric contraction. If you need to turn the load, you turn it by stepping. You're not twisting with it at all. And then, as you may need to let it down, the same manner in reverse, making sure that you're keeping that head up. The load is staying in close to your body, and you're bending down at the legs with your weight back up more onto your heels, setting the load down in a controlled fashion. So that's the essential mechanics of safe lifting. Let me speak for a moment about contraindications. You maybe have heard that word. Contraindications basically mean things that are unsafe when you're lifting. There are a variety of contraindications for a variety of exercises. For example, the military press coming down behind your head, as we used to do that in the old days, is nowadays considered a contraindication. Can put strains and stresses on your cervical vertebrae region. Likewise, when you're lifting, here's another thing to consider as a contraindication. When you're coming up, you want to come up fully, but don't hyperextend back. When you have a big heavy load like that, you're really not looking to hyperextend back. You're just looking to come up into a fully straight posture. So that's an example of a contraindication. As we get to discussing more individualized exercises, I'll try to remember to touch upon those safety considerations and mention any contraindications with any of these exercises as we go along. The only other thing I would say on the topic is really that when you're looking to lift safely, an important factor is lifting regularly, having your body both accustomed to it in terms of going through the technique, but also strengthened into it. The more in shape you are for that sort of activity, the more likely you are going to be doing it safely when you have to engage in it in other ways. So, let me just talk a little bit about lifting awkward loads and things of that sort. I actually brought these out initially. I thought I would use them as an example of a contraindication. So since they're here, here's another example. If you're using like like upright row action, coming up to where the arms are parallel to the ground is where you want to be. Some people make the mistake of really trying to bring the arms up past that plane of the shoulder. That's another example of a contraindication for an exercise. Anyhow, I spoke of the weight belt in the other video. Please check it out. And here's another thing to consider when lifting safely, is making sure that you have proper attire, proper footwear. If you're dealing with things that are particularly heavy, or your grasp on them is tenuous, you may want to consider steel-toed footwear for the occasion. But at least lifting anything of any significance, it's a good idea to have footwear on. It doesn't take much, especially on the edge of something, to smash your toes up pretty good. So let me just start right here as an example of something that you might find you want to lift, but it's a little awkward. I spoke of making sure that all your technique is good, getting that head up, getting that back in the proper position. I'm bending at the legs, I'm getting down low. I want to make sure I get a good grasp on it. I tip it one way, tip it the other, getting it nice and close to myself. And when I'm ready to go, here's the other thing I don't believe I mentioned before, is I want to exhale on the exertion. So I get a good breath and I'm ready to go. And I thrusting those hips forward, getting it up to where I need to be. And then as I might need to move with it, making sure that I'm doing so carefully. Turning by stepping. I'm not twisting with it. And then when I'm ready to set it down, same kind of action. Really just trying to keep it close to me, bending at the legs, heads up. One of the most important things I think really helps is practice keeping that head up. As I say, really naturally tends to want to bring the spine into proper alignment. And then making sure you're setting it down carefully enough so that you're being careful. One point I'll mention, I think that doesn't really get mentioned with this kind of thing, is communication. Sometimes you're lifting with other people, you're dealing with moving furniture or whatever it may be. Communicating through the process, making sure people are ready for you to set it down when you let go on your end or something, is pretty important in helping people stay safe, because a lot of times somebody drops something, it's the sudden jerks that can really mess with people, cause troubles. So keep good communication in mind as well. Moving along, just utilize this thing. Getting a little heavier. Sometimes loads get pretty awkward, sort of thing. Maybe you need to lug around on your shoulder or something. Got to get it up there. That can be a challenge for people sometimes. So talk about that. Put the weight belt on, because this is a pretty hefty load. Yeah, just to make sure. No need to take a risk, because I want to get the log from here to there. Don't need it to be something that puts me out of commission for 2-3 months. So, the idea here, don't want to roll it out of the video range. Sometimes, especially logs, tend to have a heavier end and a lighter end. This one's pretty even. It's hard to judge, but I think that might be the heavier end. I'm going to go this way anyways with it. First thing I want to do, get it up on end. Much easier for me to get under the center of gravity that way. Once it's up on end, this one's tending to want to lean that way, but I think it'll rest better up on my shoulder over here. So I'm going to get it here. Now what I need to consider is that I really need to get low as I can underneath it to get it up onto my shoulder. I want to get down under that center of gravity so it'll tip and teeter over the top of my shoulder as I get underneath it. So that means I've got to get deep with this thing. If I can't get deep enough, I don't necessarily want to start getting into something where I'm trying to go down to my knees or something like that. That can be problematic for me. There comes a point when I may have to lift it off the ground upward some in order to achieve getting below the center of it onto my shoulder. And because this thing is low enough and stocky enough, that's what I'll have to do. So what I'll do is get a good grip underneath here with my left hand, holding it securely here. Wait till I get myself all set. Don't need to rush set and make sure everything's right before you go. And then get ready to go. And you exhale, it's up onto the shoulder. Now because it's past my shoulder that direction, if I let it go, it would want to tip, you can see. So I've got it pretty well balanced, because it just takes a little bit of hand here for guidance. Again, as I turn, I'm turning with my feet. I really should be wanting to keep my other hand here. But depending on how practiced you are and how well you have it stabilized, you can do that. Letting it down, a lot of times something like this, I'd rather let it drop. But to show you under control, get my hand underneath, get my stance wide, bending at the legs, keeping the head up, and dropping her down right there. Just like that. Talked about flip lines, using them guiding rafts. You can check out my introductory video on that. In short, as a river guide, a raft flips over, you hop up on the bottom and you can hook on the side of the raft and use it as leverage to help you flip that raft up and back over. I'm pointing it out right here just to point out that there's a lot of different ways that you can do. This really touches back upon what I was saying about having a good grip. You want to make sure that you're grabbing it in a way that you can. So sometimes you might need things that will assist you. Let me just get it set up. So all I'm doing here is just essentially just using one flip line with the second carabiner. I can take that one right off to get it out of the way and not let anything be confusing. So now you can see, I've given myself a grip here if I want. I can pick it up. A little easier to possibly haul it around that way. Back over here where it belongs. Now, not all logs, of course, have hooks. That one happens to because I use it for a variety of things where the hooks are beneficial to me. But let me just point out something in case there's any confusion on that. It almost gets more into a straight-legged deadlift. Perhaps with this log, it's light enough. I didn't bend at my knees as much as I probably should be doing for the illustration of this video. There's also the straight-legged deadlift. Let me actually pull this bar here, where you're essentially keeping your legs straight, but notice when I'm bending at my waist, again, keep my head out and keep my back arched properly. Oops, I want to keep my legs straight. As I go down and back up. What I'm not doing, to show you the contraindication there, is allowing my back to round. I'm not going down in a way like this. So that's round is fine. Make sure that that back is staying curved and straight like that as I go down with the straight-legged deadlift. So I just wanted to explain that difference in case anybody happened to kind of see that as I grabbed that. This log isn't so heavy. It's a soft wood, and not a beast like that piece of maple. In any case, the thing I want to show you here is that you don't need eye hooks to go into the log to help you grab these things. Sometimes, I'll just do it the other way around actually. A lot of times just you get some strapping around it. I told you I found 100 uses for these flip lines. Without a doubt, a lot of them have involved lifting and pulling, a variety of things like that. Use two around the thing if I need to. Give yourself straps. If you're worried about slipping at all, you notice that it's an important safety consideration when you're dealing with lifting. You don't want things slipping on you. I just went through like that when it was, it's not very heavy load. Things aren't really dangerous to me. But if I was worried about things being heavy and slipping at all, I'd give it at least an extra wrap right there like that. And that will really help cinch things up and keep them from sliding up and down the log like that. So you can really use flip lines or other pieces of strap to your advantage when lifting heavy things. One last thing, right along those same lines, take something like this thing. It's a total beast. I don't know how much it weighs, probably weighs 150 pounds or something, but it's also awkward as can be. Not the kind of thing you want to be trying to lift and carry around. And in fact, I don't. I tip it over, I'll roll it around, things like that. But if for whatever reason you find that you had to lift something like this, here's an example of what I'm talking about being able to utilize strapping or flip line or rope or anything like that to your advantage to make it a much safer deal for yourself. It's a little tricky because if I let go here, it'll fall out. I got it. Once you get it, you can see how I can use some wrist straps. Use them as wrist straps rather to my advantage. Hand past the carabiner. And once I'm here in a position like this, I can have some grip on the thing, right? Lift it up, move it around as I may need to. Much easier for me to obviously hold on to it, keep it close to my body, that sort of thing. So, this concludes my video on safe lifting techniques. I don't think I missed anything. I hope not anyways. In any case, I hope that this has been beneficial and valuable to people. Domo arigato gozaimasu. Thank you. Sayonara.